Oh man. Okay. This is something. All right, I figured I would do this second episode of the podcast, doing it absolutely naked. That way I can feel good about the fact that I'm on record as being naked. So I want to welcome you to podcast number 2 of the Panpsychic Sauna. It's nice and warm in here. I'll have a limited amount of time to talk to you. And I did get one question, which I've kind of paraphrased in my mind from my friend David Elton. So I appreciate that. And I did get a little bit of, feedback from friends and things about the Panpsychic Sauna. And I think I survived. I mean, people said that they liked it more than they didn't like it, and that kind of stuff. So, I'm Warren Charles Dexter. This is the Panpsychic Sauna, where we try to cover applied panpsychism, where we try to take panpsychism and use it in regular life. So, we didn't do a very good job in podcast number 1 of explaining what panpsychism is and how people are excited about it in the school of philosophy at major universities and that kind of thing. But panpsychism is the idea that consciousness is an intrinsic component of matter itself, and that consciousness may originate somewhere in the layer where the energy is. And that would be the energy that makes particles move at the speed of light all the time. And since I, here in the Panpsychic Sauna, am using heat and what we know about basic physics to understand how to use heat to excite molecules. And in this case, I'm pretty excited. So anyway, here in podcast number 2, I'm going to cover something that was the whole reason that I wanted to get into broadcasting, and that is a thing that I like to call the Limbaugh formula. And the Limbaugh formula was conceived when I was in my 20s, and I first started listening to Rush Limbaugh on the radio. And what you realized, different from any other radio broadcaster that you heard, was that he had a rather panpsychic, super conscious ability to connect with his audience. It was amazing. It was as if he was allowing you inside his head for a free and open form discussion about anything. And even though he focused on conservative political issues, he was just one of those guys who could really, when he did have a caller, he could really read into that caller and he could get a lot out of it. It was a beautiful thing. I came up with this whole concept of the Limbaugh formula, which was something that combined Rush Limbaugh and the idea of Socrates, and the fact that a long time ago in the first democracy, Socrates was famous for talking to the young students of the day and getting them a little bit riled up the way that Rush Limbaugh riled up his audience, and that some of those kids went and overthrew the Senate of the day, and that was why Socrates was forced to take a humiliating death by hemlock. And that was because he had instigated what was a bit of a battle there at the Senate, and people died. And so many of those young persons that had listened to this Socrates character and all of his oratory, that they were swayed enough to do illegal things. And so when I was a young man, I set about trying to write the Limbaugh formula and show how this guy was such a good orator, that he had attracted these crowds very much like Socrates, and that he was not part of the government but a voice on the side talking about things in politics, and that he was very, very good at it, and he became famous with certain basic techniques, oratory techniques. debate techniques. He would not lose. And the basic essence of the formula, as I laid it out, was that Rush Limbaugh believed that he was omnipresent or all-knowing, and that if there was any tiny component or thing that he did not know, it would be totally able to be learned. Like right now, he could just tell him what it is and he'll know that now. But he considered himself a repository that was very good at what it was doing, which was being able to put inside it, this repository in his mind, this incredible wealth of free-flowing energy, essentially. And this is why I link the two things, that we're talking about people and how they can harness energy for broadcast and using it live as energy that comes through a camera to an audience. And that we find that the best technique is to go straight from the soul and to be able to speak from the soul, or whatever phraseology we want to use that way to describe it, but really from the heart of the being to the audience directly. And so that's one of my efforts here in the Panpsychic Sauna, is to just use the heat of the moment to try to construct, to believe that I can construct something beautiful and wonderful and a message that's worth listening to. And that this is really part of an educational process for me, but that I'd like to teach other people how to do what you see some of these great influencers do online. JP, gosh, I love JP. People that can just riff, essentially. And they work well with video when they can cut the segments, and cut the segments, and cut the segments. But persons like Rush Limbaugh were fantastic because they didn't need any editing. they were fantastic right out of the box. There was an excellence in their broadcasting. And I'm not that way. I'm a stuttering, stammering, amateur. But I thought, hey, if I were to get a different kind of studio situation where I just was enough unique, where I could be seen as weird in some way, because that's how I am. I think I'm pretty weird. I'm not above thinking that we are connected the way some great audience / caricature talking head on the TV, whatever kind of connection you can imagine might be possible. It happens in a very magical way. So let's step back and look at that on a panpsychic level. When I was in college, I had a great instructor at the University of Oregon by the name of Sean O'Rourke. And he used a couple of phrases that come back to me all the time when I think about intense interpersonal communication. And the first is that meanings are in people and not in words. That words we confuse, and we aren't very good at being able to deliver words as wonderful, perfect packages. And so we tend to surf language in a way that really is not perfect at all. And we tend to create language on the fly in a way that comes from our soul, and we have to learn how to do that. So when you're trying to talk to your grandson or to your TV as if it is your husband or your wife or your person that you're really trying to reach out, you have to find that way to reach all the way into your soul and to bear it and to be naked. And as I was studying Rush Limbaugh, I was introduced by my friend John Shipe to a wonderful teacher out of Hollywood that did an acting training. And it brought me to think about this sauna in his acting training, because he referred to a box. Now, wasn't necessarily a box getting this hot. I'm starting to get kind of hot. But what they would do as an exercise would be to draw a box on the stage as part of an improvisational theater exercise, and actors would take turns to get inside the box, recognizing that the rules would say that once you were in the box, you could do or be anything you want. You could scream or do terrible things. You weren't held accountable for what it was that happened to you while you were in the box or what you did. You were a performer, and that this box gave you the ability to get outside yourself. And it was a powerful box, even though it was not powerful at all. It was just a line drawing on the floor. But actors would take the time to think, oh, I'm about to go in the box, and they would work themselves up. Actors like De Niro and Sean Penn and others that had been a part of this training. So I thought that was neat, and it is true. You have to be able to find your own box, get in it, and then essentially forgive yourself for what you're about to do, because you don't know and you're not totally in charge of it, because you're human, and it is all a sort of a panpsychic experience. You are surfing an object that is comprised of tiny bits, and the bits themselves are comprised of tiny bits that are moving at the speed of light. So here I might be knocking on 200 degrees in the sauna, hoping that my gear is holding out and it's not fuzzing out and that kind of thing. But really, what you're doing is exciting every single one of these cells, at least the way I kind of picture it, the cells on the outer edge of the body, enough that you're starting to feel the warmth penetrate. But I don't know how deeply it penetrates. I kind of get the sense that it might start at the surface and then work its way deeper through the tissue. But that's where I start to get into sort of an applied panpsychism interpretation. I mean, if the molecules are being superheated at the surface, at the epidermal layer of your body, and then you're following that energy as it goes into the muscles, we know how it happens when we're cooking a steak, because we watch it cook the steak. And hopefully I'm not quite hot enough here to cook this as a steak right now, which is why I can't last forever. Podcast number 2 will have to be over pretty soon. But I really do appreciate every single person who came and looked at podcast number 1, and to just kind of put a bow on it, it was to say that I thought there were ways to save the world. I thought these video projections that we're now putting out on the internet, I think they're important, and that we shouldn't just do it with TikTok kind of simplicity. We should go for that full TED Talk kind of thing. But you set yourself up with your own panpsychic space, whatever that is, a studio of your own. Learn how to use basic equipment and lighting and the things you need to learn. And then all of us together can reimagine teaching and communication of everything. And eventually we will get this boiled down into this true oracle of, real knowledge, wisdom even, saved for eternity in some fun way that really does connect us. It was the hope, but it's not what has happened. Every website is now a stack of advertisement. Every keyword search is a guided tour of a whole bunch of people that are trying to charge you money. It's kind of like walking down the street in Times Square and being shouted at in the old days when every shop along there was a little girly bar, and you'd have these terrible people trying to lure you in to these bars, and they wanted your money, and they were offering you whatever it would take to get you in the door to start drinking their booze and their whatever it was. But it was all a ruse. It was a lie. They knew what they were doing was taking you, and they were going to take your money. And that's the way the internet exists now. So when you find these guys that are out there like Joe Rogan, super duper podcast guys that live in the shadow of Rush Limbaugh, and think about him whatever you want, there were voices that learned how to do this from Rush Limbaugh, and I'm one of those. So I just wanted to be able to say in this that there was one question that came in from my friend David Elton, and he attempted to ask a question about how panpsychically I could justify continuing to support Donald Trump, essentially, or anything associated with Donald Trump. And I don't know what I support yet. I see that Donald Trump is amassing the strongest army going into this next warfare that we're about to have. And I'm more sad at the fact that it is warfare, and it's terrible that we would be in such a state of our political situation that a clear-headed individual could not step to the front, and I still hope that's possible, and that it could be Trump, but that we need someone who is a clear-minded and serious person. And I think I am concerned that Donald Trump may not see that his best role right now maybe as a godfather, a leader of the party from the sidelines, a driver of a show person, the Vince McMahon, or whatever that guy was from the World Wrestling Federation, of a movement that really needs to happen, that he can be the guy with the microphone for. But we need a very, very serious and experienced in some strange form, but capable leader that can go in and represent the United States of America well. So I would say panpsychically, what we're attempting to create is honesty. And I think we have to admit honestly now, we haven't had a real debate about anything for a very long time. There have been no debates. There have only been point making and fact checking, point making and fact checking, and as though they changed the rules of debating to get it to this place where what we're doing is point checking and fact making and whatever. It's just dumb. It doesn't force anybody's feet to the fire. It doesn't ask any of the questions that need to be asked in public of people, and it doesn't create any pressure on anybody to do anything but hide. And you can't do that in a sauna. If you end up getting a chance to sit down next to some old guy in the sauna, and Lord knows what the heck that guy's wearing, or however it goes, public saunas being what they are. But if you get a chance to have a conversation, I'll bet you it'll be honest. I bet you that it would be honest, because you're in a sauna and you're stripped everything down to where it's just heat energy and your energy fighting back, trying to hold on to your space in an inhospitable environment for a short time, knowing that when you walk out, you're going to feel cool. Anyway, I'm having a lot of fun with the idea of a panpsychic sauna, and I needed to create a schedule. And so I decided that applied panpsychism says that the number 11 is critically important. And that since I began here in the year 22, which is when 11 returns to itself, that I would celebrate once again everything that I know of 11, which is that 1 has returned to itself. And so I've returned here to myself. And that I plan to do this, and I'm making my own little pledge here because I've managed to do it once, but I would love to be able to do this, that I think that panpsychism may have to be just imaginarily a base 11 system. So I began with the first podcast of the Panpsychic Sauna on 1/11, and in 22 here. And then I waited 11 days here. So today is 1/22/2022. And I have this weird understanding of how my 11 days will overlap the rest of the days to be roughly a week and a half and a week and a half and a week and a half. But I think that's great. That means I get a chance to think about what I would come into a sauna and say. And so I think you should do that too. You should just take your own week and a half cycle and give yourself that as an applied panpsychism sub-calendar that you use to be able to stretch yourself out a little bit and give yourself a little more time, because 7 days are nice, but 11 days, you know, that's kind of cool. So let's say we were just planning to meet back here again in 11 days. I could do that, and you can watch these, of course, whenever you want. And I'm trying to make something that is worthy of a binge watching, with no edits and straight up and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I can do it. It's hard. I'm just trying to be charming on some base level and have something to say that means something. And I had a communication today with a kind young man who just found out that he's going to be a father. And I think when we talk about applied panpsychism, it's pretty neat to be able to think about what that feels like. So I'd like you all to think what it would feel like for you if you had found out today that you were going to be a father of a little cool little baby, like a little ball of baby. And anyway, I bet you'd like it, and it was fun thinking about it. And I sure look forward to watching my daughters as they try to bring more babies in, because babies are cool. And we don't learn much more beyond the time that we are babies. We just do more stuff, and we think we're getting wiser. But panpsychically, we're really getting maybe even a little less energy going on than we started with when we were first that baby. And we were just like this nucleus of panpsychic super energy, right? And so as we get settled into our ways, you got to try to keep your body with that same sort of youthful energy. And that's why the sauna is rejuvenating, and temperature change is rejuvenating. And I hope you'll share it with me. Also, I want to point out that at every one of these things, I'm going to try to reference the whole idea about the Alexander technique, which is just that idea of having good posture and holding your body in a way that has all of your molecules arranged in such a way that it is straight up and given some room for your discs and your back and your neck. And we don't last forever, and that's why I'm glad you're here. And I really do love anybody who wants to watch this, because I'm glad somebody does. Anyway, I'm Warren Dexter, and I think I'm going to get out of here because I feel good. Feel like I did something and said a few things that were worth hearing. And I'm trying to think if there's anything more that I wanted to make sure I stuck in before the end of this number 2 podcast that would be important, like when you got to episode like 50, that you could look back and say, oh my gosh, their writers totally knew what was coming. And I don't really have that. but I do have the idea that what we can do is important. And so I appreciate David Elton's question about me and how I'm going to try to justify weird conservative related political views and move forward with my own panpsychic sort of pseudo-religion, spirituality, philosophy. And I'm not sure. I really do hope we have clear spoken, as Socrates would say, great leaders are the only hope for a great democracy, that we really have to depend on those people that will step up and be amazing for us. So, all right, I'm sweating, and I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of the Panpsychic Sauna. I invite you to leave questions down in the bottom of this thing, and to tell your friends about what I'm trying to do here, and that really to remember that this is a training for you to learn how to be yourself and step forward and say what you want to say, because I believe that in the applied panpsychic way of looking at things, that is the surest way to make the world a better place. And so, have a wonderful day, and I wish I had great words like namaste and stuff that were my words, but I don't have those words. So instead I say, I hope you're happy, and that if I did anything to help that, that'd be fantastic. Have a great day, and thank you for being a part of podcast number 2 on the Panpsychic Sauna.